I thought my life had already shown me its worst. By 70, you assume fear has limits. I'd buried friends, buried my wife, survived years that taught me how quiet danger can be. So when my daughter and her husband asked me to watch my grandson for a long weekend, I said yes without hesitation. It sounded simple, harmless. Their car disappeared down the street just after sunrise. Luggage packed, smiles practiced. Promises made, 4 days, that's all. My grandson stayed close to my side, fingers knotted in the fabric of his hoodie, eyes watching everything. He was 8 years old and had never spoken, not once. Doctors used words like nonverbal and developmentally silent. I had learned to accept that silence as permanent. I was wrong. The house felt too quiet once the door shut, not peaceful, heavy, like air before a storm. I turned toward the kitchen to make my usual drink when I felt a sharp tug on my wrist, stronger than I expected. I looked down. My grandson had dropped the toy he always carried. His hands were shaking. His eyes were locked on me, wide and terrified. Then he opened his mouth. "Please," he said, a real word, a clear voice. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might collapse. "Please don't drink that." Time fractured. I stared at him, waiting for the sound to disappear, waiting to wake up. But he didn't stop. His grip tightened. "They put something in it," he whispered. "It's not safe." Every instinct I'd ever learned came roaring back. Not panic, focus. The kind that tells you something is very wrong. I knelt in front of him, barely breathing. You can talk." Tears rolled down his face as he nodded. "I always could," he said. "I just wasn't allowed to." The room felt smaller, colder. I moved the cup away like it was poison, because suddenly I believed it was. My grandson, silent for 8 years, had just warned me someone wanted me dead, and I knew, deep in my bones, that this was only the beginning. Because whatever made him break his silence had been building for a long time, and whatever he knew was going to change everything. I didn't rush him. That instinct saved us. I guided my grandson to the kitchen table and slid the dangerous drink out of sight. My hands shook, but my voice stayed calm. Years ago, I'd learned that panic closes doors. Patience opens them. "You're safe," I told him. "No one's here but us." He stared at the tabletop, chest rising fast, like he'd been holding his breath for years and just remembered how to breathe. "I wasn't born quiet," he finally said. The words came slowly at first, like a river thawing. "When I was little, I talked," he whispered. "Not much, but enough." I stayed silent. He told me about a doctor's office years ago, how he'd spoken without thinking. Just one word, a small, ordinary word that changed everything. "That night," he said, voice trembling, "she came into my room after Dad went to sleep." He didn't say Mom, not once. "She said if I ever talked again, bad things would happen. Places where kids don't come back, places where they forget everything." My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "I believed her," he said. "So I stopped for everyone." 8 years. 8 years of silence, not because he couldn't speak, but because he was terrified. "What about school?" I asked carefully. "I listen," he replied. "People think quiet means empty. It doesn't." He told me he taught himself to read by watching captions on television, by memorizing signs, by piecing together words from the books I left behind without realizing he was watching. "I hear adults talk when they think I'm not paying attention," he said. "That's how I learned about you." My stomach dropped. He explained how, months ago, he overheard conversations late at night. Phone calls whispered behind closed doors, words about medicine, confusion, timing. "She said you were getting easier," he told me. "That soon you wouldn't notice." That was when he started watching more closely, remembering everything. "Waiting, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, hating myself for the question even as I asked it. His answer cut deeper than any blade. "She's always watching." This weekend was the first time he'd ever been alone with me. The first time she couldn't stop him. "There are things I kept," he said quietly. "Things she didn't think I understood." I leaned forward. "What kind of things?" He swallowed hard. "Proof." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Where?" He stood from the chair and looked toward the hallway, toward the room he slept in, toward secrets hidden in plain sight. "Do you trust me?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "With my life." He nodded once. "Then you need to see what I found." The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Each step toward my grandson's bedroom carried a weight I couldn't name yet, but I felt it settling into my chest, heavy and cold. Family photos lined the walls. Birthdays, holidays, smiles frozen in time. They all looked normal. That terrified me. He didn't go to his dresser or his toy box. Instead, he knelt beside the bed and slid his fingers beneath the frame, lifting a loose corner of the floor with practiced ease. "I figured it out a long time ago," he whispered. Grown-ups never look down. From the narrow space, he pulled out a thin bundle of folded papers, edges worn soft from being handled too often. Not drawings, not homework, documents. My breath caught as I took them from his hands. The first pages were printed articles, medical information, the kind you find late at night when someone is researching quietly. Certain lines were underlined, others highlighted. Words jumped out at me like warning flares. Disorientation, memory erosion, dosage adjustment. Symptoms I'd been experiencing for months. My grandson watched my face carefully. She reads those a lot, he said. She talks to herself while she does. I turned the page. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, calculated, timelines, notes, adjustments. This wasn't concern, this was planning. My fingers trembled as I read entries that tracked changes in behavior, confusion, fatigue, forgetfulness, all labeled. All measured, all mine. She wrote dates next to them, he said, so she'd know what worked. The room tilted. At the bottom of the stack was something different, a single sheet folded smaller than the rest. He hesitated before handing it to me. This is why she hates you, he said softly. And me, I unfolded it, a test result. Names, numbers, percentages, 0. I read it again, still 0. My grandson's voice cracked. I found it a long time ago. That's when I knew why she called me useless, why she said I didn't belong. I dropped the papers and pulled him into my arms before he could finish. Listen to me, I said firmly. Blood doesn't decide who we protect, love does. And I choose you. He clung to me like he'd been waiting years to hear that sentence. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were steadier. There's more, he said. She thought I couldn't understand, that I was decoration. But she was wrong. I gathered the documents into a neat pile and felt something old and familiar settle over me. Focus, resolve. She thought silence made us weak. She was about to learn how dangerous it actually was. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Each step toward my grandson's bedroom carried a weight I couldn't name yet, but I felt it settling into my chest, heavy and cold. Family photos lined the walls, birthdays, holidays. Smiles frozen in time. They all looked normal. That terrified me. He didn't go to his dresser or his toy box. Instead, he knelt beside the bed and slid his fingers beneath the frame, lifting a loose corner of the floor with practiced ease. I figured it out a long time ago, he whispered. Grown-ups never look down. From the narrow space, he pulled out a thin bundle of folded papers, edges worn soft from being handled too often. Not drawings, not homework. Documents, my breath caught as I took them from his hands. The first pages were printed articles, medical information, the kind you find late at night when someone is researching quietly. Certain lines were underlined, others highlighted. Words jumped out at me like warning flares. Disorientation, memory erosion, dosage adjustment. Symptoms I'd been experiencing for months. My grandson watched my face carefully. She reads those a lot, he said. She talks to herself while she does. I turned the page. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, calculated, timelines, notes, adjustments. This wasn't concern, this was planning. My fingers trembled as I read entries that tracked changes in behavior, confusion, fatigue, forgetfulness, all labeled, all measured, all mine. She wrote dates next to them, he said, so she'd know what worked. The room tilted. At the bottom of the stack was something different, a single sheet folded smaller than the rest. He hesitated before handing it to me. This is why she hates you, he said softly. And me, I unfolded it, a test result, names, numbers. Percentages, 0. I read it again, still 0. My grandson's voice cracked. I found it a long time ago. That's when I knew why she called me useless, why she said I didn't belong. I dropped the papers and pulled him into my arms before he could finish. Listen to me, I said firmly. Blood doesn't decide who we protect. Love does, and I choose you. He clung to me like he'd been waiting years to hear that sentence. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were steadier. There's more, he said. She thought I couldn't understand, that I was decoration, but she was wrong. I gathered the documents into a neat pile and felt something old and familiar settle over me. Focus. Resolve. She thought silence made us weak. She was about to learn how dangerous it actually was. I didn't call the police. Not yet. That surprised my grandson. I could see it in his eyes when I gathered the papers and slid them into a plain folder. Shouldn't we tell someone? He asked. We will, I said, but not before we make sure the truth can't be buried. Danger like this doesn't panic when confronted. It adapts. And I wasn't about to warn someone who'd already proven they could plan quietly for years. Instead, I did something far more important. I became exactly what she expected me to be, confused. I left the papers hidden where no one would look, inside an old toolbox in the garage, beneath rusted nails and broken hinges. Then I made lunch and deliberately forgot it on the counter. I asked my grandson the same question twice. I pretended to misplace my glasses while wearing them. He watched me uncertain. This is acting, I explained. Sometimes survival means letting someone think they've already won. That evening, the phone rang. I let it ring longer than necessary. Her voice was smooth, cheerful, too controlled. How are you holding up? She asked. 4 days alone can be exhausting at your age. I let my words stumble. Pauses, confusion, just enough. Oh, I'm tired, sleep a lot. Hard to keep track of time. A silence stretched between us. Then satisfaction crept into her tone. That's normal, especially if you've been keeping your routine. Routine. That was the word she always used when she wanted confirmation. I drink what you left, I said. Helps me rest. She exhaled, soft, pleased. Good, she replied. Consistency is important. After the call ended, my grandson stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. She believed you, he said. She wanted to, I replied. That's the dangerous part. That night, I made a decision. If she was tracking my decline, then I would let her record it herself. The next morning, I called a doctor I trusted, someone who wouldn't ask questions before listening. By afternoon, blood had been drawn. Results were coming fast. I also called a lawyer. One question only. If I record a conversation I'm part of, I asked, is it legal? Yes, he said, as long as you consent. I hung up and looked at my grandson. We're going to let her talk, I said, and this time we'll be listening. We practiced. I rehearsed being weaker, forgetting names, losing thoughts mid-sentence. He practiced staying quiet just like she expected, but then we practiced something else. His voice, louder, clearer, stronger. You're not breaking your silence, I told him. You're ending it, he nodded, fear and courage colliding in his eyes. By nightfall, everything was in place. Evidence secured, witness ready. All we needed now was for her to come home, and she would. Because people who believe they've succeeded always return to admire their work. The sound of tires on gravel hit me harder than any alarm. I didn't move from my chair. That was part of the performance. My grandson sat cross-legged on the floor, toy pieces spread around him like a shield of normalcy. Quiet, invisible, exactly how she liked him. The front door opened. Her voice floated in, bright and relaxed. We're home. I waited a beat too long before responding. Oh, I said softly. Already, she appeared in the doorway, sun-kissed and smiling, eyes scanning the room the way a gambler scans a table. Her gaze landed on me, rumpled clothes, uneven buttons, tired eyes. For just a second, irritation flickered across her face, then relief. How are you feeling? She asked, stepping closer. You look worn out, I shrugged slowly. Hard to keep track of things. She sat down like she belonged there, crossing her legs, settling in. That happens, she said gently, especially when the mind starts getting tired. My grandson didn't look up. She noticed and smiled. Still quiet, I see, she said. Some things never change. I swallowed my anger and let my voice drift. I've been sleeping a lot. Can't remember if I ate this morning. Her lips pressed together in something that looked like concern, but sounded like satisfaction. That's okay, we can talk about next steps now. Next steps, I asked. Yes, she said smoothly. Support, care, maybe a place where professionals can help you manage things. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You don't want to be a burden. That word again. Burden, I nodded weakly. No, I don't. She relaxed fully now, confident, unguarded. I'll handle everything, she said. The house, the finances. You won't have to worry anymore. She was talking too much. People always do when they think the ending is already written. Behind me, hidden out of sight, the recorder captured every word. I followed your routine, I added quietly. The drinks you left, her eyes sharpened. Every day, yes, I said, they make everything fuzzy. She smiled. That means they're working. The room went silent. She realized what she'd said, but it was too late. My grandson stood up slowly. Deliberately, she turned, startled. Sit down, she snapped automatically. He didn't. He walked to the shelf, reached behind the books, and pulled out the recorder. Her face drained of color. This has been recording since you walked in, he said calmly. Her mouth opened, closed, and I can talk, he continued. I always could. The world stopped spinning. That's impossible, she whispered. I stood, straightening my shirt, letting clarity replace the act. No, I said evenly. What's impossible is thinking silence means ignorance. She took a step back, and in that moment she understood. She hadn't won, she'd confessed. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence felt different now, not forced, not fearful. It was heavy with truth. She looked from the recorder in my grandson's hand to my face, searching for weakness. She didn't find any. The man she'd been slowly erasing no longer existed. You don't understand what you're doing, she said finally, voice tight. You're confused, he's confused. No, I replied. We're done pretending. Her composure cracked. That child doesn't even know what he's saying, she snapped, turning toward him. You've filled his head with stories. He didn't flinch. You told me if I spoke, people would disappear, he said steadily. You told me silence kept everyone safe. You lied. Her face twisted, anger bleeding through fear. You should have stayed quiet. That was it. The sentence that ended everything. I stepped forward, positioning myself between them. You don't get to tell him who he is anymore. She laughed sharply, desperation sharpening the sound. You think this proves anything? Old man pretending to be sharp, a child playing a role, none of this will hold. I reached for the folder on the table and opened it slowly. You like timelines, I said. So do I. I read aloud entries documenting symptoms, dosages, and adjustments, every step of her careful plan. I watched her shoulders stiffen as her own words filled the room. She lunged for the papers. I caught her wrist without thinking. "Touch him," I said quietly, "and this ends very differently for you." She froze. From behind me, my grandson spoke again, stronger now, clearer. "I heard you say he wouldn't wake up," he said. "I heard you say 4 days was enough." Her eyes widened. She looked at him like she was seeing a stranger. "I recorded everything," he continued. "Every time you thought I didn't understand." She pulled free and staggered backward, knocking into the chair. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "You were supposed to disappear quietly." The words hung in the air. Confession. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to. I already called for help," I said. "They're on the way." That was when she broke. She screamed. She blamed. She tried to rewrite the past in real time, claiming stress, misunderstandings, accidents. But none of it mattered anymore. My grandson stood taller than I'd ever seen him. "You don't control me," he said. "Not anymore." The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance. She sank into the chair, defeated, not by force, but by the very silence she thought she owned. I put my hand on my grandson's shoulder. "You did everything right," I told him, and for the first time he believed it. The sirens stopped outside the house. That sound, sharp, final, marked the point of no return. She stopped pacing. Her shoulders sagged like something heavy had finally crushed her down. The confidence was gone. The calculations, the control. The doorbell rang. I opened the door before anyone else could speak. 2 officers stepped inside, calm but alert. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. The recorder was still running. The documents were laid out on the table like a map of betrayal. One of them asked softly, "Who called?" "I did," I said, "and the child will speak for himself." My grandson didn't hesitate. He told them everything, not with anger. Not with tears, with precision. He explained the threats, the forced silence, the overheard conversations, the careful watching, the evidence he had hidden and why. He described fear the way only someone who has lived inside it can, quiet, constant, exhausting. The officers listened, really listened. When she tried to interrupt, one of them raised a hand. "You'll have your turn," he said. "Right now we're hearing the truth." That broke her. She shouted, she accused. She claimed manipulation and confusion and stress. But her words sounded hollow, next to a child who had waited 8 years to speak. They placed her in handcuffs. As they led her toward the door, she turned back once, eyes burning with rage. "You think this makes you family?" She sneered at him. He didn't shrink. He met her gaze and answered, "Family doesn't do this." The door closed behind her. The house felt quieter but lighter. Another car pulled away soon after. My own child sat inside it, head in his hands, facing questions he had avoided for too long. Silence had protected him once. Now it condemned him. The days that followed blurred together. Interviews, paperwork, evaluations. Doctors confirmed what we already knew. The medications in my system didn't belong there. Another week, they said, and the damage could have been permanent. My grandson met with specialists. They called him bright, exceptionally perceptive, traumatized but resilient. They said something else too. His silence had never been absence. It had been survival. When the custody hearing came, it was brief, painful. Necessary. He chose where he wanted to stay. He chose me. The judge looked at him and said, "You're very brave." He shook his head. "I was scared," he replied. "I just stopped hiding." That night, we sat together in the living room. No acting, no pretending, just quiet that finally felt safe. "I don't want to be silent anymore," he said. "You don't have to be," I answered. And I meant it. Life didn't return to normal. It became something better, honest. The first weeks after everything ended were quiet in a new way. Not the kind of silence built from fear or obedience, but the kind that comes from healing. My grandson talked constantly at first, like he was making up for lost years. About school, about questions he'd been carrying alone, about thoughts no one had ever asked him to share. I listened. Every word felt like a gift. Doctors told us that what he'd survived would have broken many adults. 8 years of forced silence, constant vigilance, living inside a mind that was never allowed to speak. And yet he wasn't angry. He was curious, thoughtful, deeply empathetic. Trauma had sharpened him, not erased him. He started therapy. Speech came easier every week. Confidence followed. Teachers reported something remarkable. Not only was he thriving, he was helping other kids who struggled to speak up. "Because I know how it feels," he told me once, "to have words trapped inside." As for me, the fog lifted once the poison left my system. Memories returned, strength followed, and with it came something unexpected: purpose. I hadn't just survived, I'd been trusted. Guardianship became official. The house filled with new routines, new laughter, new traditions. We cooked together, read together, built a life neither of us thought we were allowed to have. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the trees, he asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Do you think silence is always bad?" I thought carefully before answering. "No," I said. "Silence can protect you, but only until you're strong enough to speak." He nodded, considering that. "I think I'm strong now." He was right. Some nights I think about how close I came to disappearing without ever knowing the truth. How easy it would have been to dismiss my instincts, to ignore a quiet child, to trust politeness over gut feeling. And I wonder how many stories like ours never get told. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Quiet does not mean unaware. Silence does not mean weak. And family is not defined by blood, but by who chooses to stand and protect when it costs them something. A child found his voice. And an old man found his reason to keep fighting. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there is being silenced right now, by fear, by manipulation, by someone they trust. Your attention might be the thing that saves them. And if you've ever ignored a feeling that something wasn't right, don't do it again. Listen, ask, protect, because sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one telling the most important truth.